Leilani Joy here, and welcome back to another episode of The Paint Along, the show where you can paint along with me in real time while I answer your art and not so art related questions. I am excited to be back today for a few reasons, which I will share with you guys as we progress. I just feel like I haven't created in a really long time, and I've been going through a little bit of artist burnout and political saturation and just crappy, sad, bad stuff happening in the world. Half of California is burning down, which I can relate to since just a few months ago, the San Francisco Bay Area and North Bay was on fire. So it's just kind of heartbreaking to see people losing their homes, losing their lives, and just all the stuff that's going on. And it, I don't know about you guys, but it definitely weighs on me and makes it hard to be creative. Plus it's also Christmas time, which I usually love Christmas time, and I'm always super grateful for all of you guys that shop with me. But I do start to get a little bit like burnout, just like doing packages and doing administration and answering customer questions, and all of that just kind of takes a toll on my creativity. But I'm really glad you guys are here with me today because I'm feeling a little bit more positive. I started a new piece that kind of randomly, actually. I really wasn't doing it for any particular reason, and I started to really like how it was coming along, so I thought I would do a new paint along featuring this piece, and hopefully we can get a little more positive creative energy going today and answer your questions and talk about some stuff to keep our mind off the real world, because luckily as artists we are often able to kind of escape and go into a zone, which I really need to find right now. So thank you guys, and let's check out what we've got going on. Oh, by the way, you may have noticed this enormous Wednesday Addams canvas is with me today. I'm hoping I'm not going to bump into her because she is already owned by a lovely customer of mine, and she will be on her way very soon. I just wanted to enjoy her for one paint along. These canvases are just so cool, and if you've got some big sad walls, there's still time to order some. I don't know if I can get it to you by Christmas though. It's getting kind of late, but anyways, let's go to my above camera and let me show you guys what I'm working on. I'm going to finish sketching with you, and then we will go to, I think I'm going to do a watercolor piece out of this because it's just kind of seeing watercolor and I want to just maintain the drawing as much as possible. So anyway, we'll see where we go, and let's jump in. So here you can see my little drawing, and hopefully my new experimental setup is working for you guys. If you can see here on my whatever picture you're looking at, I have a new Flexi camera monopod that I got from Amazon, and this is made by Smart Tree, and this thing is quite handy dandy. I'll probably make you guys motion sick, but this is like a really nice flexible rod, so you can get some sorry, okay. And you can really get some unique angles and stuff if you want to try something a little more dynamic. I do still love my old school one, but sometimes when I have like a little lifted board here, it's hard to get the right angle. So I thought I'd experiment with one of these. And I'm also trying a new camera, which is the mini Canon PowerShot. It's just amazing, these little tiny cameras, like how good they can film. I used to do all my filming with a big, heavy DSLR camera, and I don't know, you guys tell me if you think the quality is like just as good or better. It's kind of amazing. Anyways, I just want to make a note about this because I find it kind of hysterical. If you guys could have seen my setup in 2009 when I started my YouTube channel, you've seen my old videos, so you know how far I've come. But they didn't, like, I didn't know even what to search for, and they certainly didn't have anything like this. And so I had a hanger, and I duct taped it to a regular tripod, which I put on the lowest setting. And then I had the tripod on my desk and the hanger over my work area. And then somehow, I don't know if I taped or I used some wire to hold the camera onto the hanger. Anyways, so yeah, there you go. And now we can get amazing little devices like this. I think it's actually called GoPro flexible monopod or something like that. It has a nice heavy-duty clamp on the bottom, so you can clamp it to a desk or a shelf, or clamp it. You have to have a surface to clamp it to, so that's the only thing you would need. It's maybe a little bit short. I would probably prefer if I had a little more length, but Anyways, I'll work with it. Okay, there's so many weird innuendos happening. Sorry. I've been watching too much Red Letter Media, which is probably my favorite YouTube channel. If you guys are into Red Letter Media as well, then you would understand. All right. Anyways, enough chit chat. So here I'm drawing, and this is kind of weird, but honestly, I really like it. I felt like lately I've been sort of possibly a little bit too formulaic about how I approach my pieces. And it's not that I really like some of my recent pieces, but they really had parameters around them, because I recently did Mad Moxie from Borderlands, and I did a piece inspired by Little Shop of Horrors, which I still need to make a paint along for, or not a paint along, but a what's my other show? An Art Nouveau episode. But when you're working with a lot of elements from a theme, you're a little bit more constricted to what you can do with it. So I haven't gotten to do a piece that's like really just weird and freeing and like that in a long time. And so some of you may know that my Bad Apple group did the 12 Days of Christmas Bad Apple Drawing Challenge again this year. And I really had fun with it last year, but honestly, I've just been super busy with shows and other stuff, and like I said, a little bit of burnout, so I just didn't get a chance to participate. However, on the very last day of the challenge, the theme was Robin, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll try to do one quick drawing for the theme, and so this is sort of what came from that. So I was like, it'd be cool if it was like sort of like transforming into a bird, but it's also a headdress, and I really wanted to incorporate like a nest with, I want to hit that with some really nice robin's egg blue. Yeah, so this is what came out of that. I had a couple of just references of robins, and I just sort of sketched this in. So anyways, I'm going to refine this just a little bit more. It's almost there already, which is nice, but for this particular piece, I really like the drawing, so I want to preserve a lot of the pure drawing in this one, and I'm thinking to finish it, I'm going to do kind of a watercolor vignette. You guys have seen me do those before, and I really like them because, I don't know, sometimes switching up your medium is a nice way to kind of re-inspire your creativity. As much as I love working in acrylic paint, it's a different beast. It's definitely a lot more restrictive. I really have to have a plan for where I'm going with things, because otherwise the paint just dries so quickly. You can't really change your mind that much in the process. You can paint over it, but that sometimes is just time wasting, and then I find that I start to get some unwanted layery textures that I don't enjoy. I really like as few brush strokes and as smooth surface as possible with my acrylics. So yeah, so that's another thing I run into. When I'm doing watercolor, I kind of just have to, I mean, a lot of artists get really great control with watercolor, but for me, I kind of like that it forces me to relinquish a little bit of my control, and I let the paint kind of do some of the work, which is fun, and I really love going back and forth between the mediums, because I honestly think as an artist, I'm a bit of a conundrum artist, where I love having control, but then sometimes I love the abstract organicness. That's a new word I just invented. Organicness of the mediums. So it's cool to switch it up. I never think that any artist needs to be completely pigeonholed into one medium. Sorry, chair adjustment. I hope that most artists will experiment with other mediums. I've seen like a lot of artists that I'm fans of actually transitioning into doing dolls and fashion design or sculpture, any of that kind of stuff. So I totally, I'm all for that. Your style, I think, will come through. The things that interest you and inspire you will come through in any medium. But anyway, jumping into my questions today. Sorry, I've blathered on long enough. I think that one is a word. Blathered, I think. I don't know. Any scholars out there, let me know. Or is it Leilani makes up words today? Yeah, so you guys, man, you hit me with lots of questions this time. I think like the last paint along, I didn't get very many. I was like, you know, what am I going to talk about? But you guys really, I might have to do this in a couple of parts because you have some good ones for me today. So I'm starting with my Instagram comments because you guys were just really awesome and active over there. So my first question comes from Monica Duong Art. How has your art changed over time, and what is the best piece of advice you've been given? Now, I know I've been asked the advice question before because I feel like that's kind of like an FAQ. So I'll get to that. But how has your art changed over time? Honestly, I think you guys could answer that better than even I can. Because I have been on YouTube for like, oh gosh, what, 9 years now? Something like that, 8 or 9 years. So if you watched my earliest videos, you can definitely see how my style is adapted and changed. What's interesting though, and I'm sure some of you guys can relate to this, is I always run into a few people who are like, oh, I really miss your old style. Like, I don't know if I like the new stuff. It doesn't look like you. And I have to just, like, I appreciate feedback, I do, and I'm glad that you enjoy my old work. But for me, everyone's artistic journey is their own. So I'm trying to outdo myself. I'm trying to refine my process. I'm trying to have better technique to approach subject matters. So for me, I think that my work is much better. I've come up with better systems to create what I see in my head and get it down on paper. I think that I have grown a lot. I think it, and not really to be boastful or anything. I think it's just a natural thing that happens when you put in the time and just keep at it. So I think in some ways I have moved a little bit more toward graphic design in some of my pieces. I really love using flat shapes, but I also am trying to incorporate a little bit more of realistic face proportions. I think I have started to move towards that a little bit. Some of my earlier pieces were like really a little more primitive anatomically, like my old Alice pieces or something is like really big exaggerated eyes, not much realistic detail. But I am feeling, oh man, I really like getting in with a few more realistic details and mixing that with stylization and graphics and things. So I think I am kind of refining that. I never really like to give trolls and negative people the time of day, but I recently got a really, really hurtful negative comment, and usually I kind of just shrug, and half the time they're just so silly. But this one person felt the need to just kind of like really come at me and be like, you know, it's really so sad that your work has not developed or changed in years, and you just do the same thing over and over again. It's really sad, and like, you really need to improve yourself and blah, blah, blah. So this person, who of course had no art videos of their own, came for me and like called me out on that. And I just have to say, I mean, of course that hits me where it hurts, you know, that's personal. But I definitely disagree. I've worked really hard, and of course the same things inspire me. So you got me there. I still like doing women and with things on their head and hair and all that. It's still very much what inspires me. So I don't really think there's anything wrong with that. But I definitely think my earlier works were a lot more unpolished than my recent works. And I have a lot better techniques. I'm more efficient. I don't fight the process as much. So I have to kind of like shrug and say, you know, thanks, but that's really not helpful. It's just hurtful. And I think it's important to remember, I know all of you guys that watch my paint-alongs are not really, I never really get haters in my paint-alongs, because if they hate me, then they're really not going to watch an hour-long video of me talking. But the truth is that it's really hard to put yourself out there, and us artists especially, we already have all that negative dialogue going on in our heads on a continuous loop almost 24/7. So it's not really necessary for you to come out and say something mean, because we've probably already had that thought ourselves, and we do beat ourselves up a lot. So it's not really necessary. And if maybe it made that person feel great that day, that they really got me. But honestly, they got me for about 10 minutes, and then I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm doing what I love for a living, and I know that I'm pushing myself as hard as I can. So, but yeah. And I think it's also important to remember that you never really know what people are going through. Like, I would never, like, leave someone a comment like that. It's, I know many artists, myself included, who suffer with anxiety, depression, self-deprecation, hopelessness sometimes, frustration. So yeah, it's really not necessary for you to say that to any person, or even if you think their life is perfect, even if you look at someone on Instagram and you're like, oh my God, they're so perfect, I'm gonna leave a mean comment. You don't know if they cry themselves to sleep every night. So anyway, mini rant on trolling over, but sometimes I feel like I have to speak for all of us when I say it's really brave to put yourself and your artwork, maybe even more so your artwork, out there, because it's so personal, and having somebody just like kind of attack you like that, it does hurt. And everybody says, oh, well, just ignore it. And it's, you know, we try, but it's still there. You know, it's words can still hurt. So, but we go on, and we keep doing it, because the ones who persevere are the ones that are going to win in the end. And that is definitely true. But anyway, Monica, sorry for the tirade here. I didn't really answer the best advice I've ever been given. There's one that I've always said over and over again, which was, you know, it is my favorite and my favorite bit of advice, but I feel like I've already told you guys this so many times. So I had a teacher in college who said that being successful in art is 10% talent and 90% tenacity. And I know I've already said that one because I just really love that quote. But I think that was absolutely true. And it's something that really kind of lit a spark under me. And I was like, really? Because I wasn't afraid of hard work. I was afraid of not being talented enough. So I'm like, I think I probably have at least 10% talent. So I'm like, okay, I can run with the rest of the tenacity part. That part did not scare me. I was like, okay. So I love that. And I've been doing that ever since. So I would still say thank you to an instructor named Robert Revels, who I had my last year of Academy of Art. I don't know if he's still there. If he's still there, please send a shout out to him and tell him that I still use that as my best advice ever. Okay. Next, I've got a question from Derpsicles. Okay, Derpsicles. So far, you win the funniest screen name today. I love it. What tends to be your creative process? Do you get an idea and draft before you create the final concept? Or do you tend to jump in with an idea and immediately start painting? I have trouble finishing anything I start because I take so long and nothing is ever exactly up to my standards of what I envisioned. Well, first of all, I definitely relate to your last statement. I know part of being an artist is learning to accept a piece is as good as it can be and then move forward. Because all of us that are expecting perfection, you will never get it. I mean, let's just be honest, okay? There's always going to be one thing about a piece that you're going to be like, God, that one eye, but usually other people don't really notice it as much as you, and you go, okay, that's good enough. I did my best, move on. So that's something you're going to have to balance out. The rest of your question, I'm guessing maybe you don't watch my videos, because I don't know, maybe you just are new, because I definitely show that process in all my videos. So yes, I do concepts, I do, thumbnails, it kind of depends. So this particular piece is different because it was just kind of on a whim and I just started sketching it. Yes, so that is different. But typically I go through, the, like, as I call it in my art school express class, so those of my students know this, is the professional illustration process. And that consists of doing rough thumbnails, followed by a tight sketch, followed by a value study, and then color comps. Now, depending on the complexity of the piece, if it's actually for a client, I encourage all my students to go through that process, because especially if they're having issues like you're having, Derpsicles, that when you get to the final product, you're like, none of that is working. If you do all those steps, you're going to eliminate a lot of that, because if you've got it working, especially in the value stage, if you've got the piece working in the value stage, all your elements are gonna work in the final stage as well, even if there's no detail. I think a lot of artists get caught up in seeing other artists that do beautiful detail, and they train themselves to do detail, but then they don't know how to plan a piece or where to put their shapes or values and their composition and all that. So it can be very important, I think, to work all that out beforehand to avoid putting all of your robin's eggs in one basket, so to speak. So I would encourage you, if that's something that you're struggling with, is constantly not liking your final product, get a thumbnail you really like. And if you're hung up on, if you get caught up in details, which I sometimes find myself doing, do them really, really small. And do them with, you can even try doing thumbnails with like Prismacolor markers, like use grayscale. They have like a really nice gray set, or Copic markers, and just literally put in some values in different arrangements and shapes, kind of with your concept in mind, but just to figure out where things are going to fit on the page. And then move forward to more details and maybe like a sketch. Sometimes I usually do, as you guys know, I usually do my thumbnails without any reference of any kind. I just kind of start scribbling. And then once I have a thumbnail that I'm happy with, when I move to the more refined drawing, that's when I'm actually going to bring in some reference and get the pose, the hand, the angle of the head correct. So when I'm doing thumbnails, I don't worry about that so much. I'm just trying to kind of get the forms where I want them. So hopefully that helps, Derpsicle. If not, if you still need more help, I'd love to take you aboard my Art School Express class. Email me for a exclusive coupon. Yeah, so that could kind of help you learn some things to think about when you're starting a piece. Because I think a lot of us, and you know, myself included, sometimes I even forget this stuff, and I not only learned it but also teach it, is like, well, what are all these things that I should keep in mind to create a good piece? There's definitely there is a formula to that, and I don't know about you guys, but I love a good formula. Anything that can kind of help me achieve better results faster is always a good thing. Okie dokie. Next I've got one from Shelby Cross. Hello, my dear Shelby Cross. How are you today? First I want to say I love your art, and watching your videos and looking through your Instagram has really helped me inspiration-wise and always makes me want to paint with acrylics. Oh, well, thank you, Shelby. That's very, very flattering. It's helped me through my first college painting class ever. Oh, I'm so glad. As for the question, what made you want to freelance rather than work for a studio or company? Fear of humans. Okay, kind of. And what is a good starting point for someone trying to start out in the freelance world? I ask because I'm currently in college and working towards being an art teacher for high school, but I wish to freelance on the side when I'm not teaching. Any helpful tips would be awesome. That's a great question, Shelby, and it's one I ask myself on occasion. Honestly, I never really considered working for like a studio, because I wasn't, when I first graduated from art school, I mean, so first just let me say, I think it's fantastic that you're thinking about these things now. I kind of was behind the 8 ball in that way. I don't know. I kind of felt like some of my teachers weren't quite sure what to do with me. I was shy. I was kind of doing kind of like anime looking stuff, and I wanted to be like, you know, Audrey Kawasaki and Camilla D'Erico, although I wasn't really doing comics. So I wasn't really sure how I was going to fit into all of that. And I had no plan when I got out of college. I got my degree in illustration, but like children's illustration wasn't really something that interested me too much. So yeah, I was a little bit stuck at that time. I didn't really mean to. And I should also be clear that the amount of freelance illustration I do is very minimal, actually. I haven't done a lot of that in a long time. I have done my fair share of it, but to be honest with you, most of the freelance I did sort of fell into my lap. It was just that they emailed me and they're like, we saw your art either on YouTube or somewhere, and they asked me to do an assignment. So I haven't really gone out looking. So mostly the majority of what I do that earns me a living is my fine art and reproducing my fine art. So I'm actually, I mean, most artists are hybrids, but I'm actually almost completely a fine artist, which means I do my own work and then I sell reproductions of it. I used to do more commissions, which are even slightly different than freelance for companies. Well, not slightly, actually can be quite a bit different. So, but that's really not my favorite thing to do. So I'm not really doing those anymore either. So that's a very long-winded way of saying I'm probably not the best source for that. However, I do know there's a couple things if you want to do freelance that might help. So artists can get agents, just like actors. You could seek out an agency that would help you do that. And they would seek out jobs for you. They would take a percentage. They're also paid. But I know some artists, some freelancers that do great with an agent. And that really kind of, they don't have to, especially if you have another job, if you're teaching full time. Teaching can take a lot. If you're doing grading and other things, it might be nice to have somebody else actually seeking out the work for you. The other thing you can do is I'll have to look them up because it's been a while since I have sought these out, but there are illustration databases that are like similar to LinkedIn except for artists. Behance, I think, was one. There's, I don't know, you guys chime in on this if you've looked into it, because I haven't sought this out in a while. But now that there's no more net neutrality, which I'll get to later, I might end up seeking out more stuff like that. Since none of you guys will, in America, will be able to see my website without spending a lot more for luxury internet packages, but that's a story for another day, or maybe later. So yeah, so you can look into that, do some research on databases. Agents also might be able to give you some advice on what they look for in portfolios. Maybe do start to narrow it down to what kind of illustration that you would like to do. Do you want to do greeting cards? Do you want to do children's illustration? Do you want to do, scientific or, nature? What kind of illustration you want to do? Because when you're freelance, you do need to have a portfolio that a client can easily look at and say, okay, this is the type of product we're going to get from this artist. It's a little less important when you're a fine artist, because it's like, well, customers can choose which ones they like, if that one doesn't sell well, whatever. But if you're trying to promote your illustration portfolio, you really do need to have a clear voice and consistency. And even if you want to do different types of illustration, then I would recommend having 2 different portfolios. So I think someone asked me this on another paint along once, which was an interesting question. And she said she liked doing, pretty type, pretty art and stuff, but she also liked doing sort of dark, maybe macabre or creepy or whatever, even sexual art. So you might want to keep those separate in 2 different portfolios if you're drawn to that sort of thing. So yeah, that's probably not the most helpful thing, but there's some good books out there. I recommend the Graphic Arts Guide for Artists once you get out of school to kind of know the going rates for things. I need to get a updated copy of that. Actually, they have them on Amazon. Yeah, so I don't know. I might revisit this one, especially because it's something that I wanted to talk about in my business of art class, which I don't know. I have to talk to you guys more about that later, but I know I've been saying for so many years I'm going to do this business of art class to teach you guys how to launch yourself, and honestly I'm just feeling very sort of defeated about it right now, because everything is changing so rapidly that things that I did when I first started out and kind of got me going are completely irrelevant now. Yeah, so YouTube has changed, Facebook has changed, Instagram is part of Facebook and has changed. So I'm trying to scramble and figure out how to adapt. So I'm like, I can't teach you guys what won't work anymore, if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking very hard, and I'm trying my best to figure out some workarounds for some of these new challenges that we're being presented with, and then maybe I'll have some stuff to translate onto you guys, because I know it's frustrating. It's like, oh, okay, I just figured this out, and then they switch it on you. So it's so hard, I know. And all I ever wanted when I was getting started is somebody to kind of guide me a little bit, because I had no clue, and it took me a long time. It took me more years than I wish it had, if I'd had a little bit more guidance of what steps to take. So my sketch is getting, well, what was that? My sketch! So my sketch is definitely getting there now, and it's kind of really fun to just sort of work on a work on a refined drawing like this is actually quite enjoyable, because a lot of times I don't allow myself the luxury of really working a drawing too much, because I'm like, well, it's gonna go into paint and I'm not gonna actually transfer all this anyway, so it doesn't matter. But in this case, I think I'm gonna try a technique where I'm going to actually scan this drawing and then print it on fine art paper. I have my printer will allow a watercolor paper to go through, which is really great. So I'm gonna actually print this drawing very lightly onto my watercolor paper, and then I will finish the piece that way. That way I really preserve this drawing, because I really like it, and I don't want to lose anything in a crappy transfer, and it's not really worth the extra step, especially if I really like this stage. So I'm almost there, and then when I do that, I'll come back with you guys. But let's see if we can squeeze in one more question while I do just a little bit more refinement. Almost there. I really love something I tell my students all the time, which is something that can really make your drawings or line drawings stronger. I'm not an expert in line drawings, but something that I always enjoy the stage of choosing which lines are going to have a little bit more weight to them and which lines are going to be thinner weights, and varying those. It's a really easy technique to make a drawing look better than it even is. So sometimes I like a little bit more of a heavy line on the outside edges and taper them a little bit as they go into the body, or where there's a soft curve, and kind of tapering those and doing a little bit more of a nice varied stroke, if you will. Yeah, and it translates well in ink as well, and it's something you can definitely get inspired by looking at comic book artists who are inkers who do this so expertly well. All right, and so one more question before we go to paint, and perfectly ironically, it is from Paint Stained Nando. Welcome back, Paint Stained Nando. Are you still paint stained, or did you get some of the stains out? Hola, Leilani. I'm just wondering, have you considered having some merch with an official logo on it? I know that if you had a shirt with your logo on it, I'd be giving you all my money. And also, who would you do for Snatch Game? Oh, God. Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm down for that. I didn't know if anyone would find my logo particularly interesting. Although, so I'll put it up here if you guys... This is kind of the logo I've been using for the last few years. I did have a really nice rubber stamp of it made that I use for packaging and stuff. And I have had a couple of people ask me if I had stickers of it or anything. So if you guys like that, I mean, I would consider doing a simple logo tee. I always figure people like want something more from me since I do paintings and stuff. But, you know, that's cool too.
Welcome back to Snatch Game. I'm Cher, bitch.
Who would I do in Snatch Game? I think have I been asked this before? This is a hard one. I've actually tried to think about it before, and I usually come up kind of empty because I don't know if I've never really attempted to impersonate someone, so I don't know how well I would do. I used to, back when Mad TV was popular, I used to do Miss Swan all the time. I'd always do impressions of Miss Swan.
Yo, he look like a man.
But somehow, I'm not sure if that's a little bit, like, derogatory now. I feel like some 90s comedy is kind of, like, doesn't really fly anymore. So, no one has done Miss Swan, though, and she was super funny. I always thought that character was really well executed. I used to laugh so hard. So, that was one that I had thought about just because she's funny, and actually, it would be a good one for Snatch Game because you could just... You know, she would always act like she wouldn't understand you, so you could kind of fake your way through some of the questions, probably. I don't know, like, because, you know, of course people have told me, oh, well, you look just like Ramona Flowers, which I think I could look like, but I don't know if that would be a great Snatch Game character because she's not funny, really. I do think characters who have a humorous element are always better. I might consider, especially now that I'm a blonde, doing Meryl Streep from Death Becomes Her, though.
These are the moments that make life worth living.
Okay, I'm gonna work on that one because that is one of my favorite movies of all time. No, my God. Wait. Okay, I don't know. So either Meryl or Goldie Hawn in that movie when she has all the cats and she's eating like marshmallow fluff out of the can and she's okay, no, that's it. That's what I would do. And then every time they'd cut to me, I'd go,
I would like to talk about Madeline Ashton.
I want to talk about Madeline Ashton. Okay, that's what I would do. All right, that's a good question. Okay, anyway, that's a good point for me to take a quick pause, tighten up just a few more of these lines and noodle it a little bit more because I actually just enjoy that. I might think of working this. I kind of made this like shape here, which is like sort of like circular part of her headdress, but maybe it'll have some design in there. I don't know. Play around with that a little bit more, and then I will come back either the same day or next day to work with you guys some more and start painting this piece. So what will seem like a second to you, maybe hours for me. So let's do that now. Ding! Now that was one hell of a costume change, if I do say so myself. I wish it was that easy. I wish like in those science fiction movies where you could put like, you know, like in The Fifth Element where she puts like a box on her face and like changes her whole makeup look. I really wish that was real. Anyways, I'm back, and I actually, I was having like tons of technical difficulties, so it was kind of irritating. It took me like an entire weekend to figure out what was wrong with my computer, because I actually came back the same evening to work some more on my piece with you guys. And for some reason, my FaceTime camera in my laptop here would not record anymore. And then the cord to my mic shorted out, so I wasn't getting any sound. And then the memory on my computer was full, so I couldn't record anything. And it was just like, oh my God, it was to get back with you guys. So yeah, but anyway, I did finish my drawing. And I'm very, very pleased with with continued in part 2.